Hi, I can see that there's a few people already coming on. Can you tell me if people make comments on the screen? Can you read their comments? Just answer yes, you can read people's comments or not. So if somebody makes a comment and says hello, can somebody else tell me if they can see it? Good morning, hi. So can everybody see that comment that says good morning? I'm just new to this live stream with YouTube and I'm just trying to work out how it actually works. I can see the comments. Yes, you can see the comments. Great. Okay, I can see the comments, but sometimes they go that quick. Hi to Kaz, I think it was. Yeah, you can see the comments. Okay, great. Right, so in the last few couple of live streams that I've done, a few people have made comments about this card that you've seen on my desk. Now, this was all done in ScanNCut canvas because I added the dashed draw lines on. So I'm going to do a tutorial on this to show you how I did it, because I used a shape that I traced for this middle section, although in this machine there is a shamrock 4-leaf clover shape. I don't know whether it's just in the 900 or if it's on all machines. If you go into pattern and then into this section with like the flower and the present, and then click on the flower icon, it's here on page 2, on the bottom of page 2. So if everybody's got that, I don't see any reason why you couldn't open that and then save it and put it in Canvas and then do the same project. But that's just by the by. So in today's live stream, I'm going to show you how to make this little mum card, because somebody also commented recently, would I do a shape card for mom or mum? We tend to say mum in the UK. I think other parts of the world say mom. So I kind of thought I'd combine the two, the lucky card, and but make it into a mum card. And then, as I say, I'll make the lucky card in a recorded video showing how I did that in Canvas, and I'll put that up in a couple of weeks. So this card, easy to make. I don't know if you can see it properly. It's just a little shape card, and the U of the mum is bigger than the other two letters. This was all done directly on the machine. I'll leave it there. So I'm going to zoom you in to the screen. So hopefully that might be a little better. And we've got the same issues today as we had the other day. It's been raining and dull all morning, and the minute I come on here to do a live stream, the sun's come out. So anyway, we'll crack on and see how we go. So I'm going to go into pattern and I'm going to come to the font, and just to make it easy, I'm going to choose this first font because I think everybody will have that font no matter what machine you've got. So I'm going to choose that. I'm going to type a capital letter M and I'm going to say OK, set, and that's put it on the mat. And I'm going to come to add, come back to the same text, do the U, set, add, and then do the other M. Now the reason I'm doing it this way is because there's no undo function for when you type a word directly on the machine. In Canvas, you can type a word and then you can divide it and break it up into individual letters. You can't do that on the machine. And I want to make the U bigger in a few minutes. So the first thing I'm going to do now, I've got the word mum in the top left-hand corner. I'm going to come to this top left icon. I'm going to use the 3 red boxes and the box that's around the 3 shapes. That means it selects all 3. And I'm going to say OK, and I'm going to bring them down into the middle of the page so you can see them. Now I'm not going to group them. If I group them and then go into the directional arrows, the alignment icon is greyed out, it means I can't use it. So I'm just going to X out of that and I'm going to ungroup them. I've still got them all selected, but they're not a group, although because they're all selected, they move as one, if that makes sense. So I'm going to come into the directional arrows and I'm going to come up to, no I'm not, I'm going to go back. I'm going to come to the icon that makes the size bigger and I'm going to select that. Sorry, forget that, I am going to group them at this stage. So I've typed the words, I've selected them all and I've grouped them. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Now I'm going to come into the resize button. I'm going to make the width just for the, you can make this as big as you want and obviously you can resize it later and I'll show you how to do that once it's been made and saved. But for now, I'm just going to make it, I think I did this one about 4.5. So I'm going to make the width 4.5 inches. In fact, I'll make it 4.75. Then I'm going to select this icon here, which is the aspect ratio, and that means now that I can alter the height without touching the width that I've just set at 4.75. So I'm going to make the height 2.25. So what we've got now so far are the 3 letters selected with a height of 2.25 inches and a width of 4.75. Now I'm just going to say OK, ungroup them and then just click somewhere on the page just so it selects one of the letters. And I want the U now, so I'm going to use the directional arrows until it picks up the U. And that's selected. I'm going to come back to the icons that can adjust the size. I'm going to make sure that I select aspect ratio because I want to make the U higher, not wider. And I'm going to take the height up to 2.5 inches. Okay, and then I'm going to say OK. Then I'm going to select them all again, all the 3, by using the box that goes around the 3 shapes. And I'm going to say OK. And this time I'm not going to group them. I'm going to come into the directional arrows and I'm going to align them all up by the bottom edge. So they all sit along the same edge on the bottom and the U is sticking up now above the other 2. And I'm going to say OK, OK, and then I'm going to bring them down in this bottom corner so they're kind of anchored in the bottom corner. And then I'm just going to click off and I want to move the U over the M and bring this M over the U because I'm going to weld them. So I'll try and zoom you in a little bit more. I mean, I can only just see this on here, so, you know, you might not be able to see it, but that's why I'm trying to talk you through it. So what I'm going to do now with the U selected, I'm going to come into the directional arrows and I'm going to move it left until I can see that it overlaps this M. Then I'm going to select this M and I'm going to move that over to the left as well until I can see that it overlaps, and then I can zoom in and I can see whether they overlap or not. I can see this one doesn't properly, so I'm going to need to move the U over. So I'm going to say OK, come back to the U, move it over a couple, and I'm going to move the M over as well because I've moved the U, and say OK, OK. Yeah, okay, I'm just going to go back. Right, so now I want to select all 3, say OK and weld. And it's going to say to me, OK to weld this pattern, it's irreversible. And it looks as though they've all welded together. So I'm going to say OK. So that is my word, welded. I'll try and zoom in. Not sure how well you're going to see this, but it has welded those 3 letters together. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go into the icon that's got the square and the up and across arrows, and I'm going to ask it to make me 4 in total. So I'm going to say 4 and say OK. So now I've got 4 separate words of mum. I'm keeping this one down here in the bottom left, and I'm going to put that one in the bottom right. Hopefully you can see that. And then these two, I'm going to put one so it's the right way round, and then this other one, I'm going to come into the adjusting icons again. I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to flip it just in case they weren't symmetrical, and then I'm going to rotate it. So I'm going to use the rotate handles and take it round 90 degrees and say OK and OK until I get back to the big mat. Can you see that? The sun keeps moving and I'm in a really bright room and I've not got any curtains, so I can't adjust the curtains, but hopefully you can see what I'm doing. So I've got the first mum word down here in the left that I welded. I've got a copy down here in the right, and these are my other two. One the right way round, the other one which I flipped and then I rotated. I'm going to take that one now that's upside down and put it in the top left hand corner. And then this other one, I'm going to bring over to the left and I'm going to take it up until the two lines of this U here overlap. These two lines here. And I'm going to zoom in and I can move it up and down. And that's our chicken cuckoo clock again. Always seems to go off when I'm doing a video. So this one that's upside down is anchored to the left and to the top of the mat. And this one's anchored over to the left. And I'm just going to take it up until I get a slight overlap of the two U's. I'm going to say OK. I'm going to come back to the 3 red boxes. This time I'm going to choose this icon, which just allows me to choose certain shapes on the mat. So I'm going to isolate just those top two because I'm telling the machine they're the two I want, nothing else. I'm going to say OK, OK and weld. And again it's going to say to me, are you sure you want to weld? And I'm going to say OK. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to save that into the machine, and I've already got one saved. Can you see? Sorry. Can you see what I've done? Okay, so I'm going to save this now into the machine. So I'm going to click OK and hit save, and I'm going to put it in the machine, and it's going to tell me where it's going to save it. And it says it's saved into the machine's memory on number 11. So I'm going to say OK. Then I'm going to hit the home button and I'm going to say OK to delete all patterns. Now I've not deleted it, I've just deleted it from this mat. So I'm going to come back into patterns, into saved data, and go into the machine and choose number 11, which is the one I've just made. Now, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to say OK to get it on the mat. I'm going to get rid of the actual shape card for now. So I'm going to select it, come to the adjusting icons and hit the bin and say OK. And that just leaves me now the two words that I made that I anchored in the bottom of the mat. The first one was the original one. That's the one I'm going to cut in paper. So I'll zoom you back out if I can. Okay, so I'm just zooming you back out for a few minutes. So this one I'm going to put just near the top on the left, and that's the one I'm going to cut in the coloured paper. And this one I'm going to put an outline on it, like a matting layer if you like, And that's what I cut the black card with. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go into the settings and I'm going to scroll until I find seam allowance, which is on page 3 of 5. And I'm going to take the seam allowance down to 3mm and say OK. And then while that's selected, I'm going to come into the adjusting icons and hit the seam allowance and say OK. And that one with the seam allowance, I'm going to put on the right of the mat. So I'm going to load the mat up now. I've got some paper here. And I'll show you in a minute. I'm just going to load up the mat. With a piece of patterned paper and a piece of black card. And I'm just rubbing it down with the back of the spatula. I'm going to load it into the machine. I'm going to move it away a little bit. And then I'm going to say OK and I'm going to do a background scan. So now I've done a background scan, I'm going to make sure that the first mum word that I welded is on this pattern paper and the second one that I've added the 3mm seam allowance to is over the black. Now the next thing I'm going to do, because this is a new machine to me and it cuts differently to my other machine, my old 600, I'm going to add a test cut. This is card and this is a Stampin' Up! Designer Series paper, but it's like a lightweight card. So I'm just going to cut them together. So this is the thicker one. So I'm going to go to add, choose test cut, and I'm just going to choose a square and say set. And I'm going to drag that tiny little test cut just on to the bottom of this piece of black card and say OK. I'm going to set my blade to about 4.5 and see what happens. And I'm going to say cut. And the only thing it's going to cut is that little test square. So I'm going to say cut and OK. Without removing the mat, I'm just going to hold on to this card so it doesn't move. And I'm going to lift up and see if it's cut that square, and it has. And it's not cut through the mat, so I know that that's probably around about the right blade setting. So I'm going to say quick cutting. I'm going to hit the back arrow. I'm going to go into the directional arrows and I'm going to hit this arrow until I get that little red test square, and I'm going to send it to the bin and say OK, because obviously I don't want it to cut that again because it's already cut there. And then I'm just going to zoom in and make sure that these two are positioned and they are on the respective piece of card. And I'm going to say OK, OK again, and cut. And go. Now, has anybody got any questions while this is cutting? And I'll see if I can try and answer them, because I can't watch your questions and do the work on here at the same time. Okay, so that's cut. So we will unload. I'll try and move everything back so you can see it all. I'm going to peel this off and throw that away. Peel that one off, and hopefully, if I've done it right, these should nest together. Okay. So they nest together now. I'm just going to go into the set. I'm going to say okay, and I'm just going to go into the settings and make sure I only had a 3mm seam allowance on. Yeah, I did. Okay, so that's that part, and then all as I did with this one is I used a black and white pen and added my own dash lines on. So now, bring this back. Hopefully you can see it. I'm going to hit the home button. It's going to ask me, is it okay to delete all the patterns? I'm going to say yes. I'm going to go to, yeah, the faux stitching on this one is all done by hand. But on this one I made a few weeks ago, it was done on the machine. Sorry, it was done in canvas. So I'm going to do a separate video showing you how to do that. But this one I'm showing you today is just the process of making a shape card, and as I say, you can add your own embellishments by hand. So I'm going to come back to pattern, saved data, go into the machine, find number 11, which is the one I've just made with you here live. I'm going to say okay, and then this time I'm going to delete these two words at the bottom. So I'm going to come into the box with the square, the circle and the triangle, top left, and I'm going to hit the directional arrows until I can choose these. So that's the first one. I'm going to hit delete, then that one I'm going to hit delete, and then I've just got this one. Now this time I'm going to come back into the settings of the machine, come back to page 3, and I'm going to make the seam allowance 5mm, and I'm going to say OK. Then while this is selected, I'm coming into these directional arrows and I'm going to add a seam allowance, and that now should add a 5mm seam allowance to this shape, which is going to be the base card. When I did this one, I went into the seam allowance and made that 3. So by making this one 5, this should now sit on this card and have the border around it, as you can see in orange, if I've done it correctly. So I'm going to say OK and put it on the mat. I'm going to load up a piece of card, burnish it down. If you can't see what I'm doing, I'm using the back of the spatula and I burnish the card down. And one thing I would say, I wouldn't normally use a full A4 piece of card if I was only cutting something this size, but just because I'm doing it live, that's what I'm going with. I'm going to load it in. I'm going to say OK and do a background scan again. And I'm doing the background scan so that I can position the shape on it without wasting card. It's one of the main features I use the most on my ScanNCut, this background scan. So now I can see it. I'm going to drag it up here. I'm going to say OK. It tells me I've got 5mm seam allowance on here. And I'm going to say cut. This card is a little bit thicker, so I'm hoping I've got the right blade setting, but if not, I can always send it through and cut it again. So before I unload the mat, I'm just going to lift it up, hold on to it at the top so it doesn't move, and see if it's cut through. And it's not cut through all the way, so I'm just going to change my blade ever so slightly, say OK and send it to cut again. And providing you don't unload your mat, it will cut in the same place. should have done a test cut really, like I did when I cut this, but we'll see how we go. Right, this time you can see it's cut through, so I'm going to unload the mat, move the machine out of the way. Take this off and hope that I've done it right and we get the right size. So this just needs to fold in half now. And be creased. So I'm going to find my bone folder, which is on my desk, and I'm just going to give it a crease. Move this mat out of my way. So that's the shape card, and if I've done it right, that should sit on there with a border, and that will sit on there with a border. And that's how easy it is to make a shape card in the machine directly. Now, let's just say you want to make this bigger, because obviously I'm just making this small just for the video. So I'm going to bring the machine back in and hopefully you'll be able to see this. I'm going to say OK because I've finished cutting. I'm going to hit the home button, say OK to delete all patterns, and I'm going to come back to the pattern. I'm going to come into my save data to the machine, and I'm going to bring that number 11 onto the mat and say OK. Now when it brings it on without any of your seam allowances already added. So all you need to do is just put all your shapes on top of each other. Come into your directional box here with your square, your triangle and your circle. Select everything. Use the select everything icon and say OK. And then, keep forgetting to do this, group them. Come into the box that's got the square and the up and across arrow. And because they're all together and you've put them all on top of each other, you can now make this design any size you want, and it will size all your layers. So let's just say we want to make this 6 inches wide. So I'm going to keep pressing this until I get up to 6 inches. Or we'll go for 6.25 because that's easier. You see? And say OK. Then I can ungroup them. Just click somewhere on the mat to deselect, and then here's all my layers again. Now, obviously you'd do exactly the same. You'd delete, say, the card and cut these two. But just goes to show you that you can make them all resized. So what I would do is I would select that. You could resave it if you wanted to, so it's bigger. But as long as you remember what size you made it, so this was 6.25 wide, I can now delete that and say OK. That can be the one that's going to be cut in pattern paper. This can be the black layer, so you'd go into your settings, go to page 3, make your seam allowance whatever you want. In this case I use 3 milli. Say OK, apply the seam allowance to that. Say OK, and then you'd cut that in your black card, that in your pattern paper. Then you'd go back to the home button, go back to patterns, save data into the machine, bring on this design again. You could even just delete these and then select that one and go to 6.25 wide, because that's what we made it. Say OK, and then you could add your seam allowance, go into your settings, go to page 3, change your seam allowance to 5, say OK, add your seam allowance and cut that, and that's cut it bigger. So that's how I did that. So has anybody got any questions before I have to go? Just having a quick drink. That's fine, no problem. Thank you for sharing. Somebody's saying they've missed it. Don't worry, it's going to be up live on my YouTube channel. Once I end this live broadcast, it will go up onto my channel live, so you'll be able to watch it back. If you've got any questions or if there was anything that I missed because of the sun yet again, I'll answer your questions if you leave me a question in the comments directly under the video. Okay, so everyone seems to be saying okay and thank you. So there doesn't appear to be any questions. And there's the other one. Obviously this one's all stuck together. The flower, by the way, is a pattern that's in the machine. Go into the flowers section. I think it's on page, it's on page 1, and then I think it's on page 3, and it's this one here, AR-A031, and I just made it, I think I made it about 1.25 for the pattern paper, and then I added a second one on and made that I think 1.5 and just layered them up, and then I cut a 1/2 inch black circle which I added with a foam pad. So that's that. So any more questions? As I say, if anyone's only just found me and they've missed the live broadcast, it will be up on my channel, so you'll be able to watch it anytime you choose. Oh, thank you. Is that Peter? Thank you very much for that. He's just said lovely work. And someone's just said love watching the videos, they're great. I wish YouTube would make these comments bigger so I can read them. They're so tiny when they appear on my iPad screen that I struggle to see them. Anybody else with any questions or comments? Because I've been on for over half an hour now. And if you've got any suggestions for future videos, leave them in the comments below. Someone's just said about what if you do them in capital locks. Not sure what you mean. This was all in capitals. You don't have to. You could just go into the text and you could bring them on. You can change them to lowercase. You use this blue button here. Don't know if you can see. I can see the comments, but they flash up. So if I'm looking at the screen, I see them flash up, but they're so small, I can't get to read them all sometimes. Oh, you think the message, oh, good idea. Yeah, that would be better, but even so, I can't see them that great. Anything else that anybody wants to know? I know, lol, I am so stupid. I think we just need to get YouTube to make them so that they come up bigger, or give us an option for resizing them. I do need to go to Specsavers, and do you know what? I've actually got my glasses on as well, so that's how sad that is. No, I really am stupid, honestly. Perhaps I need to go and get my glasses changed. Okay, anybody else got any questions with relation to what I've actually shown you? Apart from the fact that I'm blind. So someone's just said I'm amazing and they wish they could do what I do. You can, honestly. Please just watch the videos back and try it. Like I said, Oh, thank you. Someone just said they think I've done a great job. Like I said, when I did the live stream the other day, when I was just doing an introduction to this machine, don't be scared of it. Faux stitching's great. It's better to do it in canvas if you want a really, you know, perfect, neat size all the way round. But at the end of the day, you know, they're handmade cards, aren't they? We're not machines. I just did this all by hand. So all the black was done with this thin felt tip pen from Morrison's, and all the white was done with, I think I used the Signo, or if I didn't use this, I used just the Secura Jelly Roll pen. Can't remember which one I used, and I just did that by hand. Sorry, it keeps going out of the screen. Okay, so it's easy to do. Yeah, as I say, once you've made your design, just because I've made this at 4 3/4 inches or whatever, doesn't mean you can't resize it. You could cut this as big as you wanted to, really. You could cut it out a 12 by 12 card if you had an envelope big enough to put it into. But yeah, you just bring it on, group it and resize it as a whole, and then add your different seam allowance onto your different layer. So, you know, in this case, the black one, add a 3mm seam allowance. If that's not enough, put a 5mm on the black, and on the card, put 7. Let's see what it goes up to. Let's choose a square, because I can't remember. And let's go into the seam allowance. Oh, it goes up to 10. So you've got 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 5/8, or in millimetres you've got 3, 5, 7 and 10. So you could make your base card with even more of a border around it. Just remember to change it in your settings before you cut it for the respective layer that you're cutting. Okay, anybody got any more questions? In capitals, please, for the person with the glasses that can't see. Okay, well, I don't think there are any more questions now, and I've been on just under 40 minutes. So I'm going to say thank you. Don't forget to subscribe if you don't already do so. Hit the bell notification icon on YouTube. And that way you'll get notified when I upload. This video will go up as soon as I finish this now. It will go up onto my channel. So you'll be able to watch it back at your leisure anytime you want. I'm trying to think what I've got coming up next. I think the next video is a side stepper card that's scheduled possibly for tomorrow. I had an unexpected day off today, that's why I'm doing this. And then I think there's a box to come, which I showed the other day, and a few more things that are already recorded and scheduled. But I will get round to doing this one in Canvas to show you how I put all this together. And I even made a little pot of gold as well, all in Canvas, just by welding shapes. So, okay, I think that's about it. I'm going to say goodbye. I'm going to end the stream here. And as I say, it'll be on my channel shortly. Thanks a lot. Bye.